All right, what's up, everyone? How are we doing? So, this video here, it's hard for me to talk about. I'm talking about Frankie Edgar and whether or not he should retire. And then more importantly, in broader terms, about MMA fighters and when they should retire and when they shouldn't and what keeps them around. And, that allure, that rush, that feeling that you get from fighting that keeps people around. Of course, there's money as well, but it's a dangerous sport, and I know firsthand. Frankie Edgar at the weekend went out there, fought Marlon Chito Vera. He's a contender in the bantamweight division, and he got knocked out again, right? He got knocked out in the third round, but he looked good. He looked really good. But most fighters that are good, like a Frankie Edgar or whoever, they look really good until they get knocked out. But what happens is the chin's got an expiry date. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Frankie Edgar needs to retire. I have too much respect for him to do that. Only he can come to that decision. But I'd be very surprised if that's not a conversation that takes place in his household between he and his wife in private, He's 40 years old. He's in a weight class now that depends on speed and reflexes and instincts. And they're some of the first things to go. Obviously, this man's had a great career, a Hall of Fame career without doubt. He fought at 155, he was the champ. He fought at 45, he was a contender. And he's fighting at 35 now, and he's still a contender. Never in a boring fight. I mean, let's go back to those fights with Gray Maynard. Those fights with Gray Maynard they were just unbelievable, So, as I say, and he's just the nicest guy. Frankie Edgar's the nicest guy on the planet. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to sit here, right, with my bloody YouTube setup and saying that a man like Frankie Edgar should retire. I'm just wondering, should he retire? And the answer is probably yes. He's done everything there is to do in the sport. But then that got me thinking, why don't we retire? And I stuck around far too long as well. Obviously, everyone knows now, this is a fake eye. And I lost that eye in 2013, but I continued to fight with one eye. And I was told by many doctors, Michael, what are you doing? You're absolutely crazy. If you lose your other eye, you're going to be blind. If you get a detached retina in your other eye, you're going to be blind. And I still threw caution to the wind, and I still went out there and fought. That's because at that time, that was all I had. That was who I was. That was my identity. And looking back for me, in hindsight, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Because when you're a fighter, you're all in, right? This is all you can. And you have to be all in, right? You can't, this isn't a sport that you can pick up and put down. It's not a sport that you play at. It's a sport that you 100% dedicate every ounce of your being to. Obviously when you got your wife and kids, you pay attention to them. But other than that, it's about your fight career. And when you're in training camp, that comes first above your wife and children. Nothing else gets a look in. And if you're out there and you're, going after business endeavors and you're doing other things, it's you're probably going to lose fights. But unfortunately, even if you are all in, you can't do it forever. And at some point, the chin has an expiry date. Now, I'm not saying Frankie Edgar's reached that point yet, but he might have reached that point. He had never been knocked out. That's how tough Frankie Edgar is. He'd never been knocked out until he got knocked out against Brian Ortega. Since then, including that one, he's been knocked out 4 times, of course, Saturday night. And as I say, I don't know Frankie's situation. He's no doubt, he's a smart guy. He's probably got money in the bank. But he's still competing, and because nobody wants to go out on a loss. That's part of the thing. When I lost to Gastelum, I didn't want to retire there, even though I knew I should. And by the way, my doctors always said to me, they said, Michael, if anything happens to your bad eye, you're going to go blind. But I still continued to fight because that's who I was. That was my identity. It's literally all I was. I know I just said that, but that was why. But I knew then that my time was borrowed. So then I diversified my attention because I had to. I just said a moment ago that you can't do that, right? I'm not contradicting myself. I'm saying I knew I had one foot out the door, one eye out of the door. Do you know what I mean? So I had to, because guess what? Nobody gives a fuck about a washed up ex-fighter. So any fighter see this, you have to use your platform whilst you have one. All right? Because when you retire, you sit around and you think, okay, and you're scratching your head, what am I going to do now? For me, when my retina detached and I ultimately lost the vision in my right eye, I was still fighting. I was still able to scratch and claw my way to the octagon. I was like, what am I going to do? Because at some point, I'm going to run out of good luck. At some point, I'm going to be forced to retire. So I started working on Fox Sports, started a podcast, started, trying to put more attention into my acting career, which was kind of crazy because nobody wants a one-eye fucked up guy, but I still managed to land some roles. You know, it was only a few years later I got this prosthetic lens, which now looks good, you know, but back then my eye used to look mangled. So that's why I say you've got to use your platform whilst you have it, because when you're retired and then you sit around for a bit and then you know, you maybe got a lot of money in your last payday, so financially you're okay. Eventually you start thinking, wow, I've got to make some money. But let's say it's been 6 to 12 months since you've last been in the octagon. People aren't really interested then. You know, you're yesterday's news, and that's just the reality. The world moves on fast and they're quick to forget. And we see it all the time. You know, a lot of great fighters stick around too long, and it's sad to see. And I don't say that sad as in, oh, it's sad, he's being sad. I mean, it's a shame because these people go out there and they provide entertainment for everyone. They put their life on the line, you know, and then sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes people don't handle their money correctly. Sometimes people get taken advantage of. Sometimes managers come and rinse them. You know, Mike Tyson was the famous one back in the day with Don King. But I suffered at the hands of that a little bit as well. You know, so there's many reasons why people, you know, aren't set up for retirement. You know, but we see it all the time. I mean, Chuck Liddell came out of retirement and had that boxing match against Tito Ortiz for Golden Boy. That was so sad to see. You know, what else did we see? Oh, Evander Holyfield just recently against Vitor Belfort. You know, I mean, that was kind of a shame to see. One would have thought Evander Holyfield was okay for money. I don't know if he is or isn't. I don't know if he did it just to test himself. But it was sad to see him in the ring. Sad to see him getting beaten up by Vitor Belfort. And even fucking sad to see Vitor Belfort teeing off on a guy at such an age. It's like, come on, man, read the fucking room. It's an exhibition match, you prick. You know, but for me, as I said, I stuck around too long because it was all I had. It was all I did. It's all I knew. You know, I mean, I could take this eyeball out. I've got 2 fake knees. My bloody wrist here needs a surgery. My neck's fucked. I'm going to have 2 more titanium plates put in my neck soon. You know, because it's the pain I've been in this last week is terrible. As I say, this is an incredibly tough sport, right? And we put our heart and soul into it. But it's a beautiful sport. It's a great sport. It's the best sport on the planet, and I love it. And I would not change a thing ever. You know, people always say to me, you know, because I have got lots of injuries, but I'd say, so fucking what? You know, it made me who I am today, and I'm very happy with who I am today. And I'm more than happy how everything worked out. You know, I would not change a thing. Yeah, I'd maybe stretch more. You know, I'd maybe wear my headgear more. I'd maybe spar a little bit less. You know, but sparring, what makes you great? Sparring is the best way of getting ready for a fight. People always used to say to me, oh, what's your secret? How do you get your cardio so good? It's like, well, I fucking spar. You know what I mean? I spar, and I spar hard. I spar until I've got nothing left. You know, when I used to finish my sparring matches, I would collapse on the floor screaming in agony. And, I just couldn't get my breath at all because I'd left it all in there. Because you've got to train the way that you're going to fight. If you don't train the way you're going to fight, when you get to the fight, and you haven't trained that way, you're going to run out of steam. You're going to be tired, you know. So yeah, people always say, "How do you get so fit for a fight? Will you fight? You want to get good at football? Play football. You want to get good at basketball? Throw a basketball. You want to get good at fighting? You got to practice fucking fighting." And we call it sparring. But still, injuries they're a part of it, you know. And knowing when to retire, I think, is part of it as well. I don't know if Frankie Edgar is going to retire, but many people stuck around too long. I think Anderson Silva. The great Anderson Silva, who's my favourite mixed martial artist of all time. You know, he stuck around too long, didn't he? I mean, but he still got it. Let's be honest, he just boxed Cesar Chavez Jr., looked amazing. Just knocked out Tito Ortiz in one goddamn punch, and he looked like the Spider of old. But around the UFC, against the best competition, he went out there on quite the losing streak, and he was getting finished. He got knocked out against Uriah Hall. So there's a guy that stuck around too long. BJ Penn. I love BJ Penn. I would never say anything bad about BJ Penn. And BJ Penn doesn't get the recognition he deserves. He's one of the GOATs. You know, people talk about George St. Pierre or John Jones. BJ Penn is in those conversations. He was a 2-weight division champion, 155 and 170. Let's not forget that. You know, so BJ Penn, certainly one of the greats, one of the people that helped put the sport on the map. But he's a guy that stuck around too long. You know, who else have we got? I don't know. I made a little list. I might have gone through them. Let's have a little quick gander at the list. I don't even want to say this one, but Cowboy Cerrone. Donald Cowboy Cerrone, I'm not saying he should have been retired. Again, I wouldn't say that, but he's a guy that should be retiring soon. You know, he's losing fights, getting knocked out. You know, so anyway, there you go. Is Frankie Edgar going to retire? I don't know. If he fights again, I'll be there front row, dying to see it. If he says I'm going to retire, then I'll much respect, tip my hat to him. And everyone else should. And everyone else that watches this sport, you know, should have a lot of respect for the fighters that go in there. You know, and you see it. There's a lot of fair weather fans out there, because a fighter goes out there and wins. They put a show on, right, and everyone loves them. And then they lose, and people talk shit. You know what I mean? People talk shit after what they've done, after what they sacrificed in a training camp, and then they go out there and they had the balls to fucking step in an octagon with another man, with the entire world watching, in 4-ounce fucking gloves, where you can throw punches, kicks, knees and elbows, and yeah, the guy lost, or I lost, or whatever. And then people are going to talk shit. It's like, fucking come on, man. Have a bit of fucking respect for the people that are stepping in there, because they truly are warriors. You know, my last fight against Kelvin Gastelum, I got caught with that right hand. I shouldn't have been there. You know, I just got choked out against George St. Pierre 2 weeks ago. But like a dickhead, that ego inside me, you know, the fighter, that heart, that desire that we all have to win fights, said, oh, I can fucking do that. I can jump straight back in like a fool. I had no business being there. You know, I remember Kelvin Gastelum when he fought Jack Hermanson on Fight Island. Jack Hermanson fought on Fight Island, and he had that war with with Israel Adesanya. And then about 6 months later, he fought Darren Till, and he lost to Darren Till. And then we spoke to Gastelum right before the Jack Hermanson fight, and he said, oh, I stepped in too quick against Darren Till. I had a war against Adesanya. I had no business being in the octagon that soon. That was about 6 months. I fought George St. Pierre and stepped in against Gastelum after 3 weeks, just fucking saying. And I was choked out, and I was still black and blue, and I flew out to China. But it's because of the ego. You know, and that's why fighters need protecting from themselves. That's why you need a good manager who cares about you. You need a good wife. You need good family. You need good people around you to try and help you make good decisions. Because we're fighters. We'll fucking fight tooth and nail all day long. Anyway, there you go. Just a few thoughts for you about where I'm feeling about certain things. Anyway, thanks for watching. Subscribe, ring the bell. Take care.